Live chat. All right. Yep. A little bit late getting here. I was in the midst of doing some research and looked up and saw I've got half an hour. And I looked up and I go, oh, I should have been here a half an hour ago. Not quite, but about that. um, yeah, so I was going through on my laptop earlier today doing a bunch of research on, well, I, I've got like 43 tabs open on two different browsers to organize the things I need to be working on to get my act together a little bit. And so I'm like, I started having an issue earlier today where one of the tabs somewhere was pinging me to let me know something I needed to pay attention was happening, but I couldn't find it. So I'm like, I should sort through and just do the little things that I need to do in each one of these tabs and do them so that I can get them taken care of and tuck them away. And the thing is, like, each one of when working on any creative project or something that seems hard to get going, one of the things you encounter is like there's just so much to do, but like each one of those steps is maybe 5 minutes of work. So if I do, 5 minutes of work here, there, everywhere, just like knock them out of the way, they'll disappear. Some of the work will be done, but when you have them all stacked up like that, it seems like an awful lot of work. When you look at a big long stack of things that need to be done, it always looks like more work than it is. If you just focus, this is, a 1 to 5 minute task that I can do, and do it, it gets it off the list and the list goes by faster. But yeah, so I was starting to work on a lot of that earlier today, and one of the things I was doing some research on were cases of, I think we were talking last night about cases of artists who have done sort of like hoaxes, I guess we'd call them, or pranks. Um, but kind of looking at examples of how some of that worked out, and some of it was fascinating to see, like the different, I want to call them projects, the artistic statement projects of certain artists that have made a major statement about how we consume media. At like, we live in an age now where, like, every day if I go on social media, I see people reposting articles that just blatantly can't be true. The laws of physics don't work that way. That's not a real thing, people. But so many people are reposting these things as if they're factual pieces of information. And looking at a world that's just, I mean, in my mind, when I think about that, like, culturally, we have apparently become way more gullible. And that's the negative end of that spectrum, where, like, the gullibility of the population to believe things to get them outraged or moving in some political or sociologically hostile direction where people are going to be angry at each other about topics. Like, that's the negative end of the spectrum. The thing I don't see a lot of is people playing in that environment for positive ends. And so part of my brain is like, is there a way to turn that around, make something viable? Like, I'm just absolutely fed up with things that are meant to make me angry, meant to make me feel afraid, meant to make me feel um, uh, just like nationalistic, hostile, tribalistic, us versus them. But every one of these traits, like, one of the basic philosophies of my life is that there is no quality that exists that doesn't have the potential to be flipped around. And it's not because for everything there's an opposite, it's because each one of those things is neither good nor bad, but we tend to focus on using them in a certain way that can be deemed good or bad. And so somebody who's uh, obstinate, obstructive, never takes any kind of um, anything outside of their own mind to heart, and they just keep going and going and banging their head against things. That's obnoxious. But you also look at people over the past who have done things for activism to benefit uh, downtrodden people, and the fact that they don't give up, they stand up for what's right, they keep going until we adjust our society to accommodate the needs and uh, pains that people go through in a way that improves all people. Like, those are the same trait expressed in different ways. And so I'm looking at the fact that culturally and societally, we are gullible, more prone to outrage, more prone to picking fights with each other and provoking one another, ready to fight. And I'm trying to just psychoanalyze and sociologically analyze those aspects of our culture and look at them and say, like, are there ways that we can twist it around so that we can see the positive aspects of some of those traits that we have? And some of that's just rephrasing it or stepping back and depersonalizing it and starting to realize, like, what are these trends? What are these actions and behaviors our culture is exhibiting, devoid of judgment on their outcome? And figuring out, like, ways that that could be applied to enable and empower and grow cultural aspects in a way that are beneficial, sustainable. And I'm thinking, like, it sounds like it's tangential to what I'm trying to do with my channel here, but it has overlaying factors. Like, if I'm going to be doing projects on a regular basis of creating something, and like when I talked about last night, where I don't want to be opportunistic, um, I don't want to be taking advantage of or farming my income from the pockets of the gullible. I don't want to do that. But if some of the projects that I make on a regular basis, rather than, here's this thing I made, pay me this much for it, once I get my, like, and then sign up for my email list so that I'll have your contact information so I can spam you on a regular basis, trying to drive you to buy more. Like, instead of doing that, the model that I'm using is more of a, here's this interesting project that I've created. Why don't you create something with some of the ideas involved with this? Here's where you can download or get this for free. And, if you like what I'm doing, support the cause of the projects that I'm working on. I feel like there's also room for me to do projects that also, like, that's neutral. Like, my approach thus far is a neutral. It's not taking anything. It's not heartlessly capitalistic. But it's also not the reverse of those things. It's not the flip side. It's that neutral middle ground. And I feel like it might benefit me to just look at the possibilities of what that reverse of that cancerous behavior is and find the mutually beneficial, growing, prosperous, sustainable methodology might be. And then see if I can incorporate some of that in my future projects. Like, I mean, like, looking at something like the coming week of, yeah, I'm going to do some food-based posts, some recipes and stuff like that. But one of the things I could do in there is, at some point, like, the idea behind what I started with was the cookbook years ago that I came up with that was like foods that don't have like you look at your commercially available foods and just the sheer amount of modified food starches and corn syrups and all those things that are added to our food that bulk out, and we're so used to them that we've gotten to a point where we feel like real food tastes a little off until we add flavor to them, and that flavor are these things that are nutritionally not valuable. They're not actual flavors. They're just they're engineered to hardwire our dopamine receptors in our brains to make us crave them and crave them more, so we'll buy more. And I feel like if I do something like a cooking show, it behooves me to potentially look into the prospect of doing things that teach you how to make dishes that are nutritionally superior to what we find on a regular basis, and aren't necessarily tasting like cardboard necessarily, but aren't using that dopamine hack that sweets and fatty foods get people, but also leave you feeling satisfied and feeling better. Like figuring out a way to take the idea of a cooking show and make it a fun, enjoyable cooking show, but underneath all of that, use some of that sociological and psychological hacking to make healthy choices enjoyable and possibly even viral. Not necessarily viral in the sense of internet viral, but make it something that people want to share with others. And I think there are ways to tap into those negative cultural hacking aspects to make positive cultural hacking aspects. And so that's sort of where like I've been plugging some of my brain into that today, while going back through and sorting through the social media management and talking with some of the communities about the rights of things I produce and release online. So like part of the reason I haven't posted anything about my board games on Tumblr yet is I'm worried that if I post the board game and its rules, the board, the pieces, the cards, and the rules on Tumblr, that I lose the rights to that at some point, either through Tumblr now owning those rights, or because they've been released free to the public at some point, I no longer have the ability to go through a publisher of any kind to release them. Because there are some things like that. Like if I were to release the entirety or even a portion of a written work on Amazon, on a free site, and try to publish through Amazon, there are some hurdles to doing that. Part of it is some of those sorts of things, if the work has ever appeared in its entirety anywhere for free or out like on the internet without, even if it's by the same person, if the author writes the work, releases the work for free, and then later sells copies of that through Amazon, they'll remove it because it is not, they don't, because it has been released into the commons at a certain point, they don't support that. I don't know if it's the same for partially released works. So like excerpts from a work appear for free, and then you can go, purchase it on Amazon or something like. I'm pretty sure they don't want you doing that either, but I don't know what the legal terms and rules are. So I've been talking to some of the people in the content creator community and seeing if I can get some feedback or thoughts on that. And so I'm looking into some of those things. The social media updating, I'm in the process of setting up some of those accounts so that I can update them from a dashboard. And I should be trying to get a little bit better at that. And I'm looking in on Reddit. Reddit is such a mess. As somebody who doesn't regularly use Reddit, it's very confusing. It's just a mess to try to figure out where to do anything. And I want to network with communities of people. I think that's a good place to do it. But figuring it out, that's work. It is hard to figure out what I need to find. But so those are some of the things I've been playing around with today. And I was doing some of that to the degree that I was not consciously aware of what time it was. I've also not eaten for a little while, so I'm starting to really feel it right now. Let's see. So what else were we looking at? Those are some of the recommendations for books that I've gotten. And that's for a project that I'm working on. And I don't know where I'm going to put that one. It's not quite a board game, and it's not quite a product, although it is sort of a product. I don't know. I'll have to figure that one out. I've been working on that one in the back of my head for a long time. I may just end up just doing that as a side project, not on channel at some point. And we lost a celebrity last night, or in the last couple days. Peter Mayhew, the guy who played Chewbacca in Star Wars. That's been kind of sad to see happen. But what else we got going on here? Reconnecting with some of the social communities that I've withdrawn from for a little while. Yeah, it just seems like a lot of things that are there that I haven't been doing that I could probably start working my way into. And I do need to contact the guys at the Make Magazine, and let them know what I've been up to with my Maker Tour stuff. But I think for that one, I kind of want to do an update video on my YouTube channel about what I'm doing, my plans, and a little more detail about how I'm doing what I'm doing, and a little explanation about some things. And doing that summary video, I need to try to do that first, I feel like. And once I've done that, it's something that I can lead them to as an intro to the topic, so that it's a little bit easier for them to not jump in the middle of a series of videos and wonder what's going on. I feel like it's something I should have done before now, but I'm working on it. And I'm just trying to thin through some of these tabs of things that I've been working on. Find the right place for some of them in my saved, so that I can access them and work on them in sequential order. And that's really what I've been working on today. Mostly what I've been doing all day. I have I have procrastinated and stepped outside to goof around on some things at a certain point, but for the most part, I've been working on figuring a lot of this out, building a plan of action, and starting to work on it. I am kind of disappointed with myself that here it is 10:15 p.m. East Coast time, and I have, again, not updated a video on either of my channels other than these live videos. So I need to stomp down on that and get to work again. What day is it? And when was the last time? I got to figure out where I am in my monthly schedule of things here. So where are we at on that? Okay, so that's that. Okay, so I'm on. I usually do weeks and sets of two, so like a pairing of a week. It's an on week or an off week for certain things. And so it lets me divide things up a little bit that way. I am on week 1 of 2-week framing. So the 12th starts another week 1. So we've got a little time between now and then to see if I can organize some things. The other thing I really need to do is start contacting people through emails, specifically makerspaces and stuff like that. I need to also let the Nation of Makers know that I'm not going to their convention this year. Just economically and time frame wise, it's just not feasible. It's disappointing, but I'm also kind of not sure what to expect from it. They had the first year one last year, and it was still sort of kind of feeling like we were trying to figure out the goals and the directions of things. And I feel like I'm not missing as much from that as I'd be missing if I were to skip the New York City Maker Faire. So I can postpone doing that one for another year or so. I may not even go next year. If I have to figure out how to organize and finance a trip to other countries next year, I don't know that I'll have the funds to bother with the Nation of Makers convention, which is sad, but it is what it is. I'll do what I can with what I got and figure out what my best options are. And that may just be to exhibit at a Maker Faire rather than the Nation of Makers convention. But I would love to see a convention, either a Maker Faire kind of thing or a Nation of Makers convention or something like that for you YouTubers to network and work together. But I have not seen any information about anything like that going on. And the thing that frustrates me a little bit about that is, like, when I go to like Reddit and try to find a channel on Reddit for YouTubers to network with each other, all I find are channels where, like, you're not allowed to post any of your videos unless you're posting it looking for reviews and critiques of your technique and how you can improve. And I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is other YouTubers who are interested in talking about projects that we can share and work on together and organize some sort of connection. Because the thing I'm finding, like, YouTube is very insulated now. It's really hard to try to build connections and community on YouTube. People really don't seem like they're interested in doing that. So many of those people who have got into this to make it a business, just like so many people, like, you get people who start a garage band, that's fine. But if you ever imagine that so many people are like, oh, wow, they just play music. And so everybody wants to be a musician. So everybody tries to join a band in high school. The thing is, most of those bands don't last. But here's the thing. If the hurdle for entry to doing those kinds of things and playing with other musicians was having to go through businesses to do it, it would cripple it. The ability of people to produce music on their own and find other people into doing the same thing, that's so much easier than finding people who are YouTubing. I just can't find, like, when I was headed out to Hawaii, one of the things I did was I put up an ad on Hawaii's Craigslist page and said, looking to see if I could meet with other creators in the area, talk about creation and maybe collaborate. And like, I got a message back from somebody who's never done any YouTube stuff, isn't interested in doing any YouTube stuff, but wants to meet YouTubers because he thinks they're amazing people. And I'm like, I want to support you, dude. I want to say, like, good for you, and I'd love to meet you, but, like, that's not what I was aiming for. And 2 weeks after I got back from Hawaii. I put one of these messages up on the Craigslist a week before a month before I went to Hawaii, and 2 or 3 weeks after I got back from Hawaii, I got a few messages, and they were, "Dear sir, please look at my enclosed resume of stuff I've done for digital content creation communities." I was like, that's no, don't send me your resume. I'm not hiring you for anything. This is not a job interview. And this is like, are there no places where people go to find other creators to become connected with and share ideas? Because I can't find them. And I would think that somewhere on like a Reddit type space would be a good place to look. But if it's there, I don't know where it is because I can't find it. And like, I think that's a shortcoming of the way that we do YouTube now. I get the distinct feeling, at least a decade ago, when you had your very first YouTubers, some of them who are still around now, that there was a sense of community that they could build easily working with each other. But I don't know how they did it. And I don't think we can do it in the way that we do YouTube now, where every 17-year-old who has an iPhone and an internet access thinks they're going to be a beauty vlogger or a prank channel or a game live streamer. Like, you can do some of those things, but I get the distinct feeling, at least from my experience and from seeing other people, like I have seen channels where a person has updated videos regularly, and 5 years down the line, they just stop updating because they never got more than 150 views. And I was like, that's disheartening, because if I had known those people were there when they were there, I would have tried to work with them and collaborate and cross-pollinate and help bring us all up, work together so that we can make a community supporting each other. But they're gone now. And part of the reason they're gone is they couldn't find a way into communities that would do that for them. And I can't find those communities right now, but I mean, I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to give up on anything. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, partly because this is something I'm enjoying doing. But there's got to be a way to build a sense of community from YouTubing. And I swear, like, even though our state is a really small population state, mostly rural, we have to have somewhere in the range of 30 to 50 YouTubers, at least in the southern half of the state alone. But I'll be darned if I can find them, contact them, and figure it out. Because it's not like you can go and figure out, like, you can't go to my About Me page and figure out where I'm located. You can't find out, like, what area I'm in, and that's fine. I'm kind of good with people not being able to track me down, considering some other things that go on to YouTubers out there. But at the same time, like, how do I find other people in this state that we could work together on things and have fun and grow what we're doing? I don't know. And, you know, we have that for maker spaces, and we have that for book clubs. We have places for people to organize those types of events for other things, but I can't feel like, how is it that YouTube, a thing where we have regular access to people, doesn't have a means of actually letting us access each other? It's such a weird phenomenon. There's got to be a way to improve that situation. And I'm not sure that I'm seeing anybody making a path for that to happen. And I'm like, is this another one of those, like I want to see what's happening at makerspaces and share what makerspaces and makers are with the world? but nobody's doing it, so I guess I have to do it. Am I going to have to do this? Like, I already got a lot on my plate right now. I got a lot on my plate. I don't know that I need to be the organizer of a national YouTube networking association. I like, I don't know, but like, I I have this little dread in me that somewhere out there is somebody who's giving up on the idea of YouTubing because they haven't figured out how to work with others yet. And like, that's a huge, like, I worry about that. Like, somebody's out there with the ideas and the creativity and the passion and the interest, and they're struggling and they're lost and they feel like nobody cares. And I feel like there's got to be a way to solve that. And if some of these things, these psychological and sociological hacks that are used negatively could be flipped around to change that, I want to figure that out. But I want to figure it out in a way that I can figure it out and then share it with other people and say, now you do this. And I want to decentralize it. I don't want it to be like a position of authority lifting people up. I want it to be a round table where everybody's at an equal footing and they're all equally capable of building their own networks and communities. I don't see anybody doing it. So I guess I'm going to have to figure out how to pull off some of these hacks to pull that off. And then sort of open source it, make it available for everybody to do the same. And it's sort of why I'm doing what I'm doing on this channel, where I do like the how to write a book, how to make a video game, and like I've enjoyed talking with you about like how to, like, the different engines we can use to create video games and the pluses and minuses on each. And like, even if you or I never get a game that goes very far, the possibility of sharing that process of figuring out which ones work for which ways to play games. Like, when I was building my first game, talking about how BuildBox has some potential, but it also has some very hard limits on what I'm able to achieve with it. And the cost to entry on that one is rather prohibitive. Like, just doing that, figuring that out, somebody who sees that video now has a better understanding of what are the possibilities they can go forward with. And they don't ever have to participate ever again if they don't want to in the community. But just learning from that, going off on their own direction and creating games and sharing with other people the games they create, that was always the goal. Like, show you how you can do these creative things and have any number of people creating new things. That's the goal with this channel. The same thing I want to try to do with building a community online on YouTube for YouTubers to support each other. Amateur Science Club. I haven't put an ad in the paper, but one of the things that, like like, maker fairs are a good place to talk to people about science projects. But I would almost say, like, science in general is a little tricky. Like, you're going to find, like, there are programmers and hardware designers, amateur radio. You're going to have model rocket clubs, and you're going to have some of those very specialized science groups. To meet in person might be a little hard. You will be better able to find some of that on online. I know there are a couple, like, do a search for something like a chemist's forum or like distinct classes of science. I think you're going to struggle a little bit with the vagary of science, but organizing like groups to do demonstration videos or even go around to schools and do demonstrations of science. That's one of the things you could probably do is if you contact schools, find out if they have, like, talk to the science teachers in schools, but also find out if they've ever had like a science demonstrations. When I was younger, and I don't know if they still do this in schools, but when I was younger, we occasionally had like it's sort of like a traveling guest teacher who would come in and do science demos of neat and ooh-ah science stuff, like the elephant's toothpaste project and stuff like that. And like if you can find out like science performers or like science shows or stuff like that, you could contact EP Birds, the people who did the Coke and Mentos, and finding out any circles of people that they communicate with on a regular basis about stuff like that. That would be a good place to start to get, and it's sort of having to like cold call and reach out to individuals and groups and seeing if you could like form a guild or a regular meetup at a local cafe to discuss projects. And then like when you're doing some of that stuff, events like amateur rocketry days where people launch rockets or do a science fair or get a table at a maker fair and talk to local science museums, like children's science museums. We've got like 3 or 4 of them in the southern half of our state, I think. And they would probably said that they would be happy to have people come in and do demo performances, I would bet you. And if you could network with other individual scientists and geeks of various kinds, I could see like the local science museums, like children's science museums and science fairs and stuff like that, working out that way. And that would be a good place. Like once you sort of build a community around that kind of stuff, you're more likely to end up with a community that wants to meet on a regular basis to talk about different projects. And that's sort of how you grow one. There may already be the like founding segments of that existing already. There may actually be like a organization for science teachers out there, and like when you find one of them, you tap into the whole community. It's like, hey, do you want to meet at a local gathering to talk about various amateur science projects and science demos that we could do and stuff like that? And like, oh, I hadn't thought about doing that. And then like you might get that snowballing faster than you realize. But I think that's the possibility. It's harder to do with something like YouTube, where like right now it feels like it's a lot of teenage to 20-year-olds right now, and you get a fair number of people who are doing like let's plays and makeup tutorials, but not a lot else. And I don't know that there is a group that has a Facebook page on Facebook that I might be able to access and benefit from. And I've reached out to them before, and it always feels like my messages go dead. And I don't know what it is, but it's a media makers group, and it's people who make movies and stuff like that, advertising and whatever. And it's sort of like the movies and acting and visual arts creators group for the region, the state I'm in. And I think it is a big hurdle because we are so rural that it's so spread out that it would be really hard to pull them all in for a regular meeting. I do think they do occasionally hold regular meetings, and I may have to go and attend one of them just to see if we can grow that interconnection again. Right now, I've got enough on my plate to plan for the trip to California for VidCon and possibly hit a few makerspaces on my way out that I don't foresee myself having the time or the opportunity to pursue that right now. And it'll probably be fall before I get the chance to do that. I do think they hold a meeting, a big meeting once a year in one of the big cities. So I may have to figure that one out. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I as a kind of reclusive shut-in for much of my life, struggle with finding the connections that lead into networking opportunities. Like, I know there are people around the area that I could probably connect to, but like getting from where I am to a connection with somebody enough to connect me to a greater community, which then allows me to do some of this, it feels like it's a lot more work for me to do that than for most people. But I still feel like nationally and internationally, we should be doing better at letting online content creators network with each other. And I don't know why we haven't done better yet. And maybe it's happening out there and I just don't know where it is. Like, I don't know. I have to look into it further. And I'm kind of chomping at the bit right now to, play around with a little bit more of that stuff tonight. I'm not going to ditch that fast on this, but we are at about 10:30. Been going for almost 45 minutes, so I think that was actually more coherent ramble than I've done recently. Pretty on the nose of what I'm trying to focus on today. And it's not as scattered as it sometimes feels. I wonder if there's I wonder if it would. It's probably not advantageous in my region and state right now. I was gonna say, like, making a content creators guild where like webcomic artists and YouTubers and live streamers and movie makers and what have you could network with each other and build a greater community. I don't think I'm necessarily the best person to do it because, like, I've been in charge of my prototype and playtesting game group for, I feel like it's been 2 years now. And like, there are whole chunks of the year where nobody shows up. And I don't know how to improve that situation. And there have been times where I've been left in charge of a maker meetup group that's different from our makerspace. And like, again, people just stop coming. And like, I don't know what I'm not doing for those local groups, or if it's just our community. Because I feel like that shouldn't be the way that it happens. And I know that it doesn't happen that way elsewhere. I don't know if that's a factor of what I'm doing or whether or not it's just where we are. Like, I don't know. I mean, it took us 3 years at our local makerspace to get above 50 members. the growth was just crawling, and I don't know why it's so hard to draw people into cooperative communities. And yet some places those types of schemes work and they take off. Yeah, I mean, I'm not my social interactions have a tendency to be kind of like I like you, let's meet once a month kind of thing. Like, I don't know that I could do a weekly thing. I might be able to. We used to do the playtest and prototype board game night weekly. And maybe if I just change the location at which I do it. I mean, there is that board game cafe that we could meet at. My biggest problem with the board game cafe is there's a door fee. You have to pay $5 to go in there. And it's predominantly a bar. It's a bar with board games that you can play with friends. And so, like, you can get pub food and you can get drinks, and you pay a door fee to go in. And I think there's a fee for using games off the shelf or something like that. I don't know. But to me, that makes it less interesting. We used to meet at a gaming shop. The shop closed. I guess there's like one or two others in the city that I need to maybe look in and check in with and talk with them about potentially doing it there. And like, I don't know that putting an ad in the paper would work for most of what I'm doing, most of the things that I work on, because my audience, my attendees are more likely to be people under the age of 40. And I don't know anybody under the age of 35 who reads the newspaper. They get all their data on computer over the internet. So I don't know that the paper would be the right way to do that. But if I could put flyers up in certain locations, maybe we could probably meet at the library. That might not be a bad way to do it. There's no fees at the doors there, and we might be able to meet at the comic shops. And if I hang up like flyers at City Hall, maybe some of like the universities and tech schools around the area. We have an art school, a technical school, and 2 colleges in the area. And I bet you we could get some attendees out of those locations. We have 3 or 4 comic shops between the 2 biggest cities nearby. And I could do a Facebook ad and pay to have that ad broadcast, but I don't want to put too much money into this if it's not going to go anywhere. And I think the other thing, when I talked yesterday about the fact that I know how to market and sell things, but I don't want to do some of those things because I'm uncomfortable with the level of manipulation involved with that. There's one of the things you can do to get more people to pay attention to what's going on in the area is hold competitions. So for like a science club, it would be a science fair, like a non-school oriented science fair. Anybody's open for entry. Have a prize for like different age groups or whatnot, and you start working on something like that. And if you can organize it with like a you notify schools and libraries and maker spaces and community centers like YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, and you just, if you post flyers for something like a science fair with prizes or stuff like that, people will come to that fair when you organize that event, and you sort of at that point have a captive audience with the same interests to pitch the idea of like a weekly or a monthly a meetup group for sharing projects and ideas. And you can do those as presentations or talks on stage at different points within the event. And that's a really good way to do that. You can do it at conventions, like a geek convention, like a science fiction or whatever convention that you have in your area, like a gaming convention or an anime convention or something like that. And like I could probably do that for some of this stuff, but I'm just like, I'm hesitant to be the one who's responsible for organizing a big convention or event like that. That's a lot of work, and it's those types of conventions, they cost a lot of money to run, and you never make the cost of those conventions back for easily your first 3 to 5 years. So you want to organize them regularly, and you're going to go into debt doing it for years. And so it's like, to me, that's not the best choice of directions to head for what I want to try to do. But I feel like if I could tap into the local anime conventions and comic book conventions and maker fairs in the area, and I mean, we only have like one maker fair in this area, to be honest, but get access to maker spaces in the area, and we do have that, and connect with the comic book shops and the library, and just sort of organize, see if I can get connections enough, maybe even contact the local schools, like I said, and like the local art museum might be something to do too for some of the stuff that I want to try to do. It's just, it's not as easy as it should be, and it's hard to be the only one trying to do it. It would be easier if I could get a small group together first to try to bring something like this off, but that's like a chicken and the eggs. Like, to bring events like this and community to support each other in doing these things, you have to have a community to support an event to build a community, and it's just kind of the catch-22 kind of thing. So yeah, that's sort of minor frustration that I have right now, that I need to figure some things out. But I think once I'm too far away from the mic at that point. Once I figure out some of this stuff, I think I could potentially get a little bit better with what I'm trying to achieve with this. But I'm hoping maybe to connect with some people at VidCon this summer. I think that could potentially at least get me some means of building a online community where we support each other. And like, there's a part of me, like, I have an idea, but I feel like it's crazy. And like, it can't be that easy. And it's just a wacky notion. And I'm sure if I start it and then try to bring other people into it, they'll look at me like I'm a weirdo. But I feel like I could probably start like a forum or like a Discord channel or something like that, where the goal is to just build sort of like a Justice League or a Avengers group. Just say like, okay, let's find some other crazy people with the same content creation superpowers and assemble them into a group where we'll help each other out to achieve bigger goals together. And like you look at certain, like if you look at Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie, and I think there were one or two other people in their little cadre of creators, and they built connections with each other to be a group that support each other and built their own little niche community in YouTube. Now, that's sort of like forming a chess club in your local school. That doesn't mean that you're connected to all the other chess clubs around. But I feel like if I could potentially start a chess club of chess club creators, that we could get sort of a chain reaction forming at that point where we could start to build things like annual events other than like VidCon, like monthly events even in multiple cities around the world where people connect with and form groups to support each other and can connect with other groups outside of their group to support each other and build that sense of community again. And I feel like that's doable. And it's possibly doable by just starting a web forum or a Discord channel and inviting a group of people saying like, look, we're starting out a organization of group founders, people who want to pull together their local YouTubers and figure out ways to make that happen all over the country and all over the world. This is where we're going to meet together. We're going to help each other grow, but also help each other establish places where people who want to do this kind of thing can find access to that community, where it's not as bloody hard as this is. Right now, it's too hard. Like, it should be possible. And I know why some of it is as hard as it is. And it's because you get those people who think, oh, I'm going to be a professional content creator. I'm going to start my YouTube channel and become YouTube famous. And so you start up a community, and then within weeks, you'll have 15 to 25 content creators, but you're going to have 150 people who join, and all they do is spam the forum with subscribe to my channel, and tell me what I should be making next. And like, that's not how this is supposed to work. And I know that happens with every community, but there's still got to be a way to make this work. There's got to be a way to make this work. I mean, I'm hesitant to make it a join by invite only. But that might not be the way. That might not be a bad way to do it if we do this right. So if I go to VidCon this summer and I start a forum or a Discord channel, and then I go to some of these meetups and meet with some other creators, and I say, I'm starting a group. What you're doing sounds like it's really kind of fun. I'd like to include you in this so that we can have a community of people who support each other and grow, but also make us a hub to which others can come into by invite. And so at that point, if I get a connection with, say, 5 to 8 other YouTubers and have a small channel of working together people, and we support each other and grow each other, and then part of that idea is that on a monthly or a weekly level, we each do a video where we look at some other small YouTuber who's creating good content, and we actively work on, our audience telling us channels they found of great creators that we should check out. But we do a video and saying, like, look guys, I found this channel that you may not know about. And we do videos once a month or once a week where we feature a channel that we've discovered and we want people to find and enjoy. And if we do that, making them, it's sort of like doing a shout out for channels that are hard to find. If we do that, it encourages other people to do that. But also, we have the potential of that initial group of 5 to 8 YouTubers that I network with, each inviting more to come and join the channel. Once we've vetted somebody to the point where we know that we're not going to get a channel spam. And so that might not be a bad way to do it. And like, you might be able to do something similar with amateur science. You might be able to start an online channel. And then if you can go to an event where you have, like, a maker fair would probably be a good place to check out if you've got one out in your area. Contact individual amateur science YouTubers and say, like, I'm looking to start a community of amateur scientists, and looking to potentially do a sort of a support group. I don't want to call it a support group. I don't know what else to call it, though. But do something like that, and I'd wager that if you can find a small core group of 5 to 8, maybe 12 to start with, and just have like a forum or a Discord channel where people swap ideas and play around a little bit and figure things out, and then gradually make it part of the project of that group to hunt down and find more people in the amateur science community through YouTube videos or blogs or science fairs or what have you, that you might be able to organize an event that way. I'm gonna give that a try run on the board game prototype and playtesting group idea. And I'm going to do that for VidCon in the summer. I might see about doing that for general content creators, so like webcomic artists. Do I want to keep the YouTubers separate from the No, I think I want to make a content creators group where webcomic artists and musicians and YouTubers and anything can join and connect. But go through that, admission by invitation only model, and then invite the first group myself. And get it to a point where everybody's invested in the community enough that they will moderate it and host it and do what we need to do as a group, not leave it on 1 to 5 people to do themselves. I like that idea. I think that is probably one of the better ways I could do that. That gets me an online community. I feel like with some of the things that, like, you're talking about doing in the amateur science club, I feel like that the possibility of doing that as an online group is possible, and maybe even more maybe I'm leaning into this and I'm pressuring you too much here, but the idea of you can do a video series on YouTube that's all private videos, so that only people who have been invited can come to see the video. So you don't have to build a whole public channel, but I don't think it would hurt to start a public channel. But you could do basically a video swap between science nerds on like amateur videos of amateur science experiments with updates that you post as private channel videos to YouTube, and then have an online community where it's like a what did we used to call it? A pen pal, almost like a scientific pen pals sending, instead of letters, videos to each other, connecting through a forum, and brainstorming written and video responses to each other. It might not be a bad way to go, and Discord would be the way to do that. Discord has the ability to share videos in their channels. Some forums don't really allow that as well. So, I mean, actually, you could probably do a search on Discord to see if there are any science channels. I bet you Twitch would be game for that too. Twitch is, when I went to VidCon last year, I talked with some of the people in charge of Twitch and talked about how they're expanding past just gameplay and they're doing other types of content. And I feel like I would love to see, like, I don't watch anything on Twitch right now. I'm not a super Twitcher, but I have an account, and I'd love to see amateur science discussions, like different scientists doing live streams about projects they're working on, and collaboration over Twitch streams on science projects. That would be cool to see. And I would bet you Twitch would love it too. Remind me of that before I head out at the end of June. I'll try to leave a note about that in some of my notes, but just on the off chance that I'm busy with so many projects that I forget, I'll see if I can find the people who are running Twitch again this year and see if I can ask them about that possibility of starting a amateur science content community on Twitch. I could probably get in on some of that. That would be kind of interesting to try. And I mean, I know some of the bigger names in YouTube science projects attend some things, and I've talked with a few. I don't know that they're ever going to remember me personally. And I've talked with a lot of maker spaces, and I bet you I could reach out to them again. Well, the reason I would almost favor, like, Twitch would be fun to do, but I think I would also favor YouTube, partly because YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. So if you do anything and you want to share what you're doing, that's a way to be found. And I feel like if you built the community first on an online venue, you might build enough of them to be able to make a live event, person-to-person event happen. We used to have a makers meetup group, and I've recently suspended the meetings because we went 7 meetings with only one other person showing up. And I've got other things I can spend my time on. I don't want to keep hosting events where nobody shows. And we used to have that group meet on a regular basis, and people would bring in projects they shared. with the group about what they were working on, and it was a blast and it was great. I loved it. And then everybody went their own direction and they filter off. And trying to get it started from the ground of the social meeting again, that's not working. But when we have a big event going on and we can connect through a digital medium about all the things different people are working on, many of the people who used to come up to the meetings still post to the posts that you can do online. They just don't drive out to meet us. So we can still have that community, and it's easier to do online. But having that online community means that we can test, we can do the question, like, do we have enough interest to make a meeting happen on this date? How many people would be interested in showing up for that event? If you get that to happen 4 times in a row, then you get enough momentum to keep that going as a regular meeting. But I think trying to start a meeting and expecting people to show up, all my experience in my past tells me that's just not going to happen. You're going to put a lot of effort into it, and you're going to get angry about 4 or 5 months in that you're putting so much effort in regularly and nobody's showing up. It's going to, well, you may not get angry, you may get disheartened. And that doesn't mean your idea isn't good, and it doesn't mean that it can't happen. It's just, I think, build the connections and the interest first, and then build the gathering, I think is the model that I think probably works best. But I haven't tried it yet, so I guess I'll have to give that a go. Yeah, so I'm going to write some of this down now and finish working on some of the things I've been working on tonight. So I'm going to head out now, and I will be back tomorrow because we're already at 1 hour and 15 minutes, roughly. And you got to have something to talk about. I started tonight thinking I didn't have enough to talk about. We're already at 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I keep saying I have to save something to talk about tomorrow, but somehow I suspect I will ramble for 1 hour tomorrow as well. So, all right. I will bid you good night, sir, and I will see you on the morrow. Yeah, we can brainstorm some of this over in the future. I think there's potential here. All right, take care.